Many of you continue to wait for your Steam Deck, and you want to know if there's going to be a delay in getting yours. Some of you are invested in Steam Deck's success and want to know how well it's doing. Well, I dug deep to get some answers. Let's get into it. What's good, Deck Gang? A few weeks ago, the Steam Deck became the top seller on Steam's charts, overtaking Elden Ring and LEGO Star Wars. At the time, I said I think it will be a while before Steam Deck drops back to number 2 or lower. Well, now it's been 4 weeks as the top seller on Steam with no signs of slowing down. In fact, today should mark the 5th week. As a result, a number of us started wondering out loud how many Steam Decks have been delivered to gamers. Over on Twitter, Jason Evangelo from Linux for Everyone asked, how many of these things do you think they've sold by now? Then me and Jimmy Champagne from Deck Ready started having a conversation about this. And you know, there are a few potential ways you can try to get an educated estimate. I think Jimmy was going to extrapolate by looking at Elden Ring sales. His video should be up by now, so go check that out too. The Steam hardware survey might tell us something next month, but I went neck deep in any Steam Deck data that we have access to in order to get you a number and some other really important observations. First, let me tell you about the data that we have access to and the potential inherent flaws. There are 3 data sources I'm going to reference. First is the API leak that was present for the first 90-ish minutes of Steam Deck reservations. The last known numbers, according to Pavel Jundik's tweet at the time, are 55,000 reservations for the 512GB model in the US, 28K for 256, and about 10K for the 64GB. There are also numbers for EU 512, EU 256, and UK 512. From this, I've extrapolated numbers for the remaining queues whose sizes were unknown at the time. This comes out to approximately 121,000 units reserved in the first 90 minutes. My extrapolation is only an estimate, but it also only accounts for about 5% of the total here. The second piece of data that we have are a set of over 10,000 responses to a Steam Deck Shipment Estimator survey that asks you when you reserved your Steam Deck, among other things. You can pull your exact reservation time from a Steam API URL. So we have the reservation time of at least 10,000 respondents as well as what their ETA is. I imagine that there is a selection bias here, as people that reserved in the first couple of hours are more likely to have responded to this survey than people that reserved a Steam Deck months later. I've been told that Moo from the Steam Deck subreddit is responsible for this form, so thank you to Moo. And then the final data that we have is a collection of the latest known reservation times that were fulfilled in each batch of emails sent out by Valve. For example, we know of a person that was able to fulfill their order for a US 512 Steam Deck, and they placed their reservation 23 minutes and 44 seconds after reservations open. We're not aware of anyone that was able to fulfill their US 512 order for a reservation time later than that, though such a person may theoretically exist. Thank you to Fami for putting that data together. This third dataset brings me to my first Steam Deck milestone. For 6 out of the 9 queues, we have passed the 90-minute mark. Theoretically, almost everyone that was able to place a reservation for one of these models in one of these regions in the first 90 minutes should have had a chance to order their Steam Deck by now. In some cases, Valve are well over that threshold, and I'll get to that later. The one piece of data we don't have access to whatsoever is an attach rate. When I say attach rate, I mean what percentage of people that were given a link to fill their order actually went through with it. Instead of me guessing the number, I asked you to guess the number. I put out a couple of surveys on Twitter and a YouTube community page, and in addition to your helpful votes, you all had some helpful comments as well. For example, Tacker said, I think only people who are literally unable to get the money together would cancel currently. Even if you lose interest in the deck for some reason, you could still sell for a profit with these queue times. Now that's true, and anecdotally I did get a few messages from people that might not be able to make the cost make sense for them right now. In any case, based on your responses, I think 85% is a conservative but fair attach rate, and I'll stick with that. Given that, Valve has nearly 50,000 units sold based on these 6 queues alone. Amazing, but there's more. For the remaining 3 queues, I mashed up all 3 datasets to come up with a percentage of how many of the 90-minute reservations have been fulfilled. That would be 51% for US 512, 47% for UK 512, and 66% for UK 256. Again, with an attach rate of 85%, we come to at least 75,000 units sold in total. Once again, amazing, but there's more. I used this same calculation to calculate the overflow beyond the 90 minutes for the queues that have surpassed that threshold. For example, the EU 64 queue should have sold approximately 9 times more than what was reserved in the first 90 minutes, according to my formula. When I add all of that up, I come to a grand total of 132,000 Steam Decks. A 90% attach rate brings that closer to 140,000. I think that number may be underwhelming to some of you watching, but ever since before launch, I've been saying that 1 or 2 million in the first year would be great for Valve. Also, they've been really consistent with the twice weekly batches, which seem to be of a similar size each time. So I have to imagine that they'll reach a point where the supply chain is no longer the bottleneck, and instead the bottleneck is their own warehouse operations. Staffing up and optimizing the warehouse logistics can only go so far and doesn't allow Valve to scale up as much as they could if they instead focused on adding more warehouses and or incorporating retail. But if they incorporate retail too early, then they risk upsetting customers that reserved on Steam. Anyway, my point is that 130,000 is more than solid for Valve here. Obviously they can't get them out fast enough considering how many people are still waiting to order their Steam Deck, and they may in fact be a little bit behind where they would like to be if they want to fulfill all Q2 orders in Q2. But the good news is they just passed a major bottleneck in the US and UK 512 queues. The first 15 to 20 minutes had an overwhelmingly large number of reservations, so even though the progress has seemed slow, they are getting through these queues faster and faster with each batch. Here is a chart of how fast they're getting through these batches, and you can see that ever since late April, there has been a major uptick. And that's really the biggest thing to care about here. You want to know when you're getting your Steam Deck, and while I don't have an answer to that question, I can tell you that Valve are so far keeping their promise. They promised to ramp up production and get through the queues faster as time went on, and it appears that they've done both. They'll need to speed up a little bit more to fulfill all Q2 orders, but it's absolutely within reach. So in summary, we most likely will never get an announcement from Valve, but I believe Valve has surpassed the 100K mark and currently has over 130,000 Steam Decks in people's hands. Maybe more, but what do you think? What are your predictions for the sales of the Steam Deck? Let me know in the comments. By the way, the Steam Deck community has done a lot of work to gather this data, and I'd love to see these efforts continue. It'd be helpful if you haven't already filled out the Steam Deck Shipment Estimator, then go ahead and check that out, maybe fill it out. And if you were able to order your Steam Deck and it's on the way, then head over to the email megathread on the subreddit and let Fammy know your region, Steam Deck model, and reservation time to keep this data train going. Oh, and now that you're done with this video, go check out Deck Ready's video on the same subject. Alright, Deck Gang out. Goodbye!